In this video, we're going to be looking at multiplication. So our learning goal is that you can use written strategies and mental strategies. So we're going to be looking at both, how we can employ both to get our answers. So I'm going to start off with just a mental strategy. So these are ones that we're going to try and do in your head. They just make it easier for you to answer questions. So we're going to look at a list here of mental strategies. We won't go into too much detail, but I'm just going to do examples. And if you have more questions about them, then make sure you ask or write them down in your notes. So the list of mental strategies is a way that we can work things out in our heads are as follows. So obviously the first one is know your times tables. If you know your times tables off by heart, you're going to get a long way, especially with multiplication. Another way that you can do is also rearrange the order of. So this sort of applies to sums where there's 3 multiplications. So it might be 3 times 7 times 4. So there's 3. You can sort of rearrange it around so it makes it easier for you in your head. The distributive law. Now the distributive law is similar to the partitioning strategy that we used with addition. So it's just sort of breaking it down into different place values. Now you have the doubling halving strategy, which is another one, similar to the addition strategy we looked at previously, but in this case with multiplication, if you double one number you have to half the other. And finally just splitting factors. So if we know the factors of a number, we can break it down into smaller parts, so then we can add those smaller parts up together. So we're just going to do some examples here. I've got examples that we can just go through, and I'll explain my thinking as we go. Okay, so the first one that we have here is, so we've got 7 times 6. Now this one will be simply just knowing your timetables. So I know that 7 times 6 equals 42. There's no other way around that other than just knowing your timetables. So if we move to this next one, we might use the distributive law here. So it's 3 times 13. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to times, I won't know that using my timetables, but I can break this bigger number down to the place value. So I know that 3 times 10, because I've got 10 here in the place value, equals 30, and I know that 3 times 3 equals 9. So really all I need to do is just have 30 plus 9, which gives me 39. So that's the distributive law. Again, you can sort of do the same for this next equation. So we've got 4 times 29. Now 29 is a difficult one, but if I make that 30, if I have 4 times 30, that makes it a lot easier for me. So remember that I've added another set here. So I've added a one more group of 4, so I need to subtract that from at the end. But now I have 4 times 30. So 4 times 30 will give me 120. And I know I need to subtract one more group of 4, because that's going to give me my answer at the end, which give me 116. Now next I have 5 times 24, and I'm going to use the doubling and halving strategy here. So in the doubling and halving, you can double one number and then you need to half the other. So if you have a 5, that's easy to double to a 10, because that makes it easy. So if I double this to a 10, I need to half this number down to 12. So 5 times 24 is the same as saying 10 times 12, which is a lot easier to do. So 10 times 12 equals 120. So make sure that you can double one and half the other one. So make sure it ends in a even number, because that makes it easier to half there. Finally, we're going to do 7 times 14, which is splitting factors. So I'll show you how we do that. So I've got 7 times 14. Now 14 is a difficult or a big number, but 14 is the same as saying 7 times 2. Because 7 times 2 equals 14, so it's just breaking it down into smaller numbers. So now I know that 7 times 7 equals 49, and 49 doubled will give me 98. Okay, so I've just used some mental strategies here. Even though I've written them down, you'll be doing these in your head, but it's just so you can understand my thinking. So best method is always knowing your times tables, using the distributive law to breaking it down in different place values, doubling and halving strategy, which we use here for our 5 and 24, and finally splitting factors. So they're just some mental strategies that we can look at. So next video we're going to be looking at how the written strategies, which I'm sure you're all pretty good at anyway.